Building off of the previous major keys we found from a new clue, we can see that the book is actually telling us quite a bit more information. Let's try and follow the detective's story and see what he's up to. At first, he is trying to find a new clue. He is looking. The question is how many should be visible. And if we pair this with the original poem clues with the music sheet clues, find here within the first word sung, we can say the detective is seeking to this. He has done a seek. On the next page, we can see that the detective is going through and studying his files. He's rewritten his theories and gone through the piles. He's retraced all his steps and has stretched on for miles. We can say here that he is scanning the files. The keyword is scan. Next, he has looked at the high bytes and the low bytes. He has finished his search. It is checked off. Every space is circled. Space would be nothing, empty. He's not doing anything. We have keep left. And in the US, you can make the phrase keep left to pass, or keep right except to pass. We have the secret passage. The key word here is pass. Next up, he looked and he looked, or rather, he peeked and he peeked. He questioned and spoke. He is speaking. And then the pictures themselves, while a little bit better in the published version, can represent mountain peaks. The major key is peak. Now, continuing off the last one, and tomb after tomb. Now, in the published version, even though so is crossed out here and says and, the published version actually still has so. This is to tell us this is a continuation. Over here, we have cuckoo too. Now, the bird peeks out, so this is the second peak. And you can also make the argument that a canary in a coal mine might be cuckoo too, and we know that canary equals 2 mountain peaks. So cuckoo 2 is the second peak. So we have performed our seek, scan, pass, peek, peek, which means the next step should be the seed operation. And the seed operation is where you effectively can shift values. And if we go to the very next page, we can see that is exactly what he is doing. In fact, one of the anagrams you make from drafted sixes includes the word shifted. You can also extract the word seed alongside the word shift. And coincidentally, the noted in verse is included on this. And so far, this is the only link we have with the book to the music sheets, because this was found in the music room along with 4 music sheets. And while this may be here for another purpose as well, we can extract the word seed from here. In fact, we can actually make a rather interesting phrase, seed read into env, where env is the environment. Now, this is already a fairly technical puzzle, right? We're writing opcodes effectively to seed this. So env meaning like an environment variable, like that's not too far out of reach, but I would say this is still more of a coincidence than anything. But all the same, this is the seed step. Now, there's still more to do with the book, and we can go forward and continue the sequence, but I want to stop there and actually double back, because the book is actually telling us some new information that we didn't have previously. On this page, which came right after the first pass, we have he looked and he looked, or he peeked and he peeked, under beds and in nooks. And there's some stuff going on here. One, we have the X under beds, and of course that can mean the barren bafflers. But then we also have nooks, which has a weird little squiggle under it, along with a black arrow pointing to it. Now, in the last video, the black arrow, the last time it was used at the very end, ended up pointing to a major key, the word pass, actually, which was the previous key we used. So let's think about what this might mean. Now, this squiggle, we've seen something similar to this before. In the Red Prince manuscript, he had heard that the sky, with a really neat little signature under there, was not a red hue. Now they're using the word hue and red, and they're saying it's not that. And if we recall from our time in the atelier, that they use the word hue and shade a lot. So you might be able to say, like, we know it's not a red hue or it's not a red shade, which means the sky is blue or a blue shade. Now, This squiggle, is that what this means? Well, I think that's what the whole point of too obvious question mark is. They're trying to not make it obvious. So let's go on this line of thinking so that this does mean this. So what is that? It's a blue shade. And why is that important? Because we're seeking what's in the shade of blue, specifically blue. It's not a metaphor. We're not looking for the truth here. We're actually looking for what's in the shade of blue. But it's pointing to a nook. Well, where is a nook in the shade of blue? Well, I can think of one place where a nook is under the shade of blue. That's the Atelier, because it is completely blue. And in the Atelier, we have the nook, and its Morajai word you make from it is rain. Rain exists in the May lock. In fact, it is one of four Morajai words that exist in the May lock. The other words that exist are seek, pass, and lies. Now, seek has been confirmed to be a major key from the blue note saying there's a key hanging on the safe house wall. Pass was confirmed previously with a black arrow in a new clue pointing to a major key. And so out of all of these it finds, it's pointing to one that also exists. So that's already pretty heavily coincidental. Now, before I go on, I want to mention that there is another green note that might relate to this. So we've been operating under the idea that underneath the keys refers to the docks. But I think we can extend that to other items underneath keys, like the boxes in the treasure trove. The treasure trove contains the Orindia symbol, at least in the outer room, and it's a black print, so it's an Orindia blueprint. So one of the boxes, a white swan box, as a matter of fact, has a green note in it that says, "It never rains in Arch Aries." And that's a lie, because it does rain in Arch Aries. Its weather is stormy. And so what's the significance of that? Well, here we have rain, and the next part of this puzzle is peak peak, which can represent Arch Aries. And so it's surprisingly coincidental there that we happen to get the word rain. There's a green note in a white swan box that says it never rains in Arch Aries. And I think that can link rain to either coming before peak peak or after peak peak. But there's actually more in this sentence we can find. We have the X under beds, which of course can mean the Baron Bafflers, but that so far has still been a red herring. And this X is in blue. So while there isn't a black arrow pointing here, which means there's probably not a major key involved, we can still operate in the idea that maybe this is talking about a blue hue, just like this was. We're looking for what's in the shade of blue. And if we go to the Atelier again, we have the bedroom. And the Morajai word there is past. Now past, of course, it's not a May 8 lock, and it's not what we're looking for. But it is interesting that we're finding it right after we found our word of pass. And speaking of, in the true path in the Atelier, we passed through rain to find the true path. So we could also say this is passed, as in P-A-S-S-E-D. We passed through rain, which is indicating, I believe, that rain comes after the word pass. But why don't we take this one step further and look at the Atelier? So back in our Atelier, we have our bedroom down here with the word past, and almost right above it, we have nook with the word rain. Now, it's super convenient that a new clue is just happening to point to two rooms so close to each other in the Atelier, and one of them happens to be a May lock word, and the other one happens to be very similar to the word we just solved, pass, with only one room in the way, the solarium, with the word through and a. You could say that to seek our shade of rain, we have to pass through the A. Now, this is relevant because on the door to the Atelier, we have a number of rooms on it, and the rooms spell the word roseberry. And out of those, the Morajai phrases on them, you can make some phrases, and one of the most accepted phrases is seek a shade to pass through the A. And that is precisely what we are doing. We're seeking our shade of rain to pass through, just like in the true path, We're starting with our bedroom, past. We're going through. Now, our word down here is past, and that's not quite right because it should be PASS. There shouldn't be a T. And so when we're passing through the shade of A, we also happen to have or leave behind a T. And so, back to our book, we have pass through rain. And so rain apparently is a major key, very likely coming after the word pass, probably before peak peak, maybe after. And this is where we're starting to not just build a command. Like we made our fractured note, but there's still the urgent plea part of this. And this, I believe, is part of that. And the seeking what's in the shade of blue is how we're probably going to find that.